Olivia Langston was the kind of woman who never froze. Not in meetings, not in negotiations, not even when her billion-dollar company's jet lost power mid-flight over the Atlantic. She was built for motion, decisive, unstoppable, perfectly calibrated for a world where emotion was a weakness and speed was survival. But that morning, in the middle of Newark International Airport, with her passport in one hand and her coffee in the other, Olivia Langston froze. Because 20 feet away in front of Gate C3, her past was laughing. A man stood with two little girls, their identical dark curls bouncing as they spun around him. Elijah Ford, her ex-husband, looked older than the memory she tried to bury. Leaner, quieter, with a touch of gray threading through his hair. His face still carried that quiet steadiness, that infuriating patience that used to both ground and suffocate her. And those girls, their girls, looked about 8 now, one animated and chattering, the other still and watchful, like she was taking in the whole world and filing it away. Olivia's first thought wasn't surprise or even pain. It was disbelief that time had moved without her. Her assistant's voice buzzed through her earpiece. "Ms. Langston, Zurich's board is waiting on your confirmation. Wheels up in 15. Olivia's lips parted, but no words came. Zurich, the merger, her empire, the thing she'd traded everything for, was waiting. But for the first time in 6 years, the thing she'd walked away from wasn't a ghost in her mind. It was standing right there, flesh and breath and laughter, tying its shoelace. Elijah bent to help one of the twins. His hand trembled slightly. Olivia frowned. That wasn't how she remembered him. Strong, unshakable, steady as stone. Now his fingers seemed unsure, deliberate. Then, as if he'd felt her gaze, he turned. Their eyes met through the airport glass. The world went very still. It wasn't the cinematic kind of reunion she'd imagined in her weakest moments. There was no anger, no shock, just recognition and a silence filled with everything left unsaid. Elijah's expression shifted just slightly, from confusion to realization, and then to something colder. Distance. He didn't move toward her. He didn't even blink. He simply reached for the girls, his hands gentle on their shoulders, and guided them toward the gate. Her breath caught. The younger twin turned mid-step, catching her eye. The child's curious stare was so direct it made Olivia's throat tighten. That smile, it was his. That wary stillness, it was hers. And then they were gone. The gate agent's voice crackled through the speaker. Final boarding call for Flight 227 to Salt Lake City. Salt Lake. Olivia blinked. He was living in Salt Lake City. Her heart, which had been a machine for years, stuttered like it had forgotten how to beat. She turned abruptly toward the window, watching the jet bridge retract. The girls disappeared down the tunnel of her past, and with them went every illusion she'd built about moving on. Her phone buzzed again. Ms. Langston, her assistant said. You're late. Reschedule Zurich, Olivia said, her voice lower, steadier than she felt. A pause. Reschedule. You're headlining the conference. The Prime Minister's hosting the dinner. Then he'll have to host it without me. She pulled the earpiece out and tossed it into her bag. Her reflection in the glass was still the same. Perfectly tailored navy coat, heels sharp enough to draw blood, lipstick immaculate. But behind the mask, something was cracking. She didn't know what she was doing until she'd already started walking. Past the coffee stand, past the business class lounge, straight to the departures board. Salt Lake City, boarding, gate C3. Every rational instinct screamed that this was madness. She had a board waiting in Europe, investors watching, a reputation built on precision. But all she could see was the tremor in Elijah's hand. The last time she'd seen those hands, they were cradling 2 sleeping infants while she stood in the doorway with her suitcase. She could still remember the way his voice sounded when he said her name that night. Quiet, disbelieving, breaking. Liv, please. She'd walked out anyway. She'd told herself it was mercy, that leaving was safer, for him, for them, for the baby she couldn't trust herself to love the right way. The doctors had called it postpartum exhaustion. She knew better. It had been something darker, something that made her look at the nursery and feel nothing but fear. But 6 years later, Standing in an airport terminal, the lie finally collapsed. It hadn't been mercy, it had been running. Her hand tightened around her phone. She opened her contacts and scrolled past a name she hadn't dialed in years. Elijah Ford. Her finger hovered over it. Then she stopped. He'd changed his number. Of course he had. But that didn't stop her from typing anyway, into the empty message bar. It's me. She hesitated for 3 seconds, then hit send. The moment the message disappeared, she exhaled, long and unsteady. Outside, a plane's engines roared to life, the sound rising like a heartbeat. Olivia turned toward the nearest kiosk. "Next flight to Salt Lake City," she said to the attendant. The woman blinked. "There's one in 2 hours, ma'am. Weather might delay departure." "That's fine," Olivia said. "Book it." The attendant glanced at her suitcase. "Carry on only?" "Yes," Olivia replied. "I don't plan to stay long." It was a lie, though she didn't know it yet. As she walked toward the gate, the last announcement for her Zurich flight echoed overhead. "Final call for Flight 337 to Zurich. Boarding at Gate A19. The life she'd built waited there, sleek and perfect. But the one she'd lost was in Salt Lake City, and for the first time in 6 years, Olivia Langston walked away from her empire and followed her heart back into the storm she left behind. Salt Lake City was smaller than she remembered, too still, too human for the kind of woman Olivia Langston had become. Her private jet had touched down at dawn, but she hadn't slept. The snow-covered Wasatch Mountains framed the city in white, pristine and unforgiving. From her hotel window, she could see everything that made this place unbearable. Calm streets, children with backpacks, people who had time to stop and talk. It was a life she traded away. Her phone vibrated on the nightstand. Cameron Reed, her chief of staff, again. Olivia ignored the call and focused on the email she'd drafted hours ago, but hadn't sent. Her formal leave of absence from Aris Aviation. Her finger hovered over send, but she couldn't. Not yet. Instead, she typed a message to Cameron. "Need information on Elijah Ford? Current address, employment, medical records if possible." Quietly, 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. A minute later, Cameron replied, "You're in Utah, aren't you? Zurich's asking questions." Olivia sighed. "Handle Zurich. Send the file. This stays between us." Cameron didn't argue further. She never did. That was why Olivia trusted her. By noon, the file arrived in her encrypted inbox. It wasn't long. Elijah Ford wasn't the type of man who left a digital trail. She opened it anyway. Occupation: music teacher, Salt Lake City School District. Residence: 1420 East Fairmont. Medical history: confidential. Partial records indicate early onset ALS, diagnosed 18 months ago. Prognosis: progressive. Olivia stopped breathing. ALS. Her pulse roared in her ears. She read the word again, slower this time, as if repetition could make it less real. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, a disease that stole the body's strength piece by piece until it silenced everything. Her hand went numb. The phone slipped from her fingers onto the bed. Elijah. The man who had once played the piano so beautifully he could make her cry without words. The man who'd composed their wedding song by ear in the half-light of their first apartment. The man she had left without explanation, too broken to tell him she was broken. Now he was fading. For 6 years she'd built empires, mastered flight, conquered the sky. And in the quiet between flights, she'd told herself he was fine, that he'd rebuilt, remarried, moved on, that the girls were happy, that her leaving hadn't shattered everything. Now she knew the truth. Time hadn't erased anything. It had just run out. She closed the file and sat in silence. After a long minute, she reached for her phone again. There was one more document attached. A scanned photo. It looked like sheet music, handwritten, incomplete, the ink smudged near the center. The title at the top read, "Where Your Name Should Be." Her throat tightened. She recognized the handwriting instantly. At the bottom of the page, faintly penciled, was a date. 6 years ago, the year she'd left. That evening, she found herself driving through the quiet streets of East Fairmont in a rented SUV, guided by the GPS's soft, indifferent voice. The houses here were modest, brick and cedar, framed by snow-dusted trees. Her headlights washed over children playing with sleds, parents waving from porches. And then she saw it. A small two-story house with a wooden fence and yellow light spilling from the windows. A red bicycle leaned against the porch railing. Two pairs of skates hung by the door, her fingers clenched on the steering wheel. Elijah stepped into view, standing on the porch with a mug in hand, watching the girls chase each other in the yard. His posture was slower now, shoulders drawn, but there was a serenity in his face she didn't remember. Leah tripped over the snow and fell, laughing. Ava helped her up, shaking her head in mock annoyance. Elijah laughed with them. A soft, easy sound carried through the cold. Olivia pressed her hand against her mouth. The urge to get out, to walk toward them, to say something, anything, was overwhelming. But she stayed still, the engine humming beneath her, her pulse louder than the wind. When Elijah turned toward the street, her breath caught. For a fleeting second, she thought he'd seen her, but his gaze moved past, unfocused, and she noticed the slight tremor in his hand as he lifted the mug again. The reality of his illness landed like a punch. She sat there until her vision blurred. Then slowly she started the car. She drove 2 blocks before pulling over again, shaking, pressing her forehead against the steering wheel. The snow outside blurred into streaks of white. Her phone buzzed on the seat beside her. A new message. Unknown number. She stared at it for a long time before opening it. Elijah Ford. When? Her heart stopped. He'd seen her. He'd recognized the car, maybe. Or maybe he'd known she'd come eventually. He always knew. She typed back before she could second-guess herself. Olivia. Now. The reply came almost immediately. Elijah. If you're serious, the cafe by Liberty Park. 10 a.m. tomorrow. She exhaled, shaking. The same cafe where they'd spent their first morning as newlyweds. She typed one word back. Okay. That night she couldn't sleep. Her hotel room felt too sterile, too silent. She sat by the window, staring at the city lights below, the snow reflecting them in shades of gold and blue. Her mind replayed every version of the story she'd told herself for 6 years. How leaving had saved them, how success had justified sacrifice, how distance had healed what time couldn't. Now none of it mattered. He was sick. The twins were growing up without her, and tomorrow morning she would have to face the man who had once held her heart, and the truth she had run from for half a decade. For the first time in years, Olivia Langston felt small, human, terrified. But beneath all of that, something else stirred, something she hadn't felt since before her life had fractured. Hope. The cafe hadn't changed. The same worn wood counter, the same mismatched chairs, the same smell of roasted beans and cinnamon. Even the barista looked like she could have been here 6 years ago, humming the same song under her breath. The only thing that had changed was Olivia. She stood in the doorway for a moment, unsure if she was ready to be seen. Her reflection in the glass door was an illusion of composure. Black coat, hair smooth, posture straight. But underneath, every nerve in her body was trembling. Then she saw him. Elijah sat at a corner table, facing the window. The winter light caught in his hair, tracing silver along the edges. His cane leaned against the wall beside him, his hands wrapped around a mug he hadn't touched. When he lifted his head and met her eyes, it felt like gravity shifted. Liv. He hadn't called her that in years. Hi, she said softly. He motioned to the seat across from him. She crossed the room, each step heavy, her heart pounding loud enough she was sure he could hear it. When she sat down, she couldn't look away from him. He was thinner now, but not fragile, just quieter, his strength turned inward. His once confident hands twitched slightly, resting on the table as if bracing for something that might break. You look different, he said. So do you. A humorless smile touched his lips. I aged. You evolved. Olivia's throat tightened. I didn't come here to talk about me. Then why did you come? His tone wasn't sharp, just exhausted. She hesitated. The answer felt too small for the weight of 6 years. Because I saw you at the airport. I wasn't supposed to be there, but fate? He asked, a wry edge to his voice. Maybe. He looked out the window, the faint tremor in his jaw visible now. You've been gone a long time, Liv. What did you think would happen if you showed up? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I don't know. I just needed to see you. To see them. At that, his gaze hardened slightly. They don't know you. Leah only knows your name because she asked. Ava, she doesn't ask anymore. The words cut deeper than she expected. Do they hate me? He shook his head. They don't know enough to hate you, but they know you left. Olivia's hands clenched in her lap. I know, and I know nothing I say can erase that. Then why are you here? Her eyes filled with tears before she could stop them. Because I was wrong to go. Because I thought I was doing the right thing, and I wasn't. Because I need to make it right before it's too late. He stared at her, his expression unreadable. Before what's too late? Her voice wavered. Before you can't. For the first time, she saw the flicker of pain in his eyes. Not the kind born of anger, but of truth recognized. He sighed, leaning back. So you found out. I wasn't looking for it, she said quickly. I didn't ask for. But you did, he interrupted gently. You always ask. You've always needed to know everything before deciding how to care. That's not fair. He tilted his head slightly. Isn't it? Silence hung between them, sharp and raw. Olivia took a slow breath. Elijah, I didn't come to fix you. I came because I can't live with what I did anymore. And what exactly did you do, Liv? She looked at him, eyes glistening. I ran when I should have stayed. He laughed quietly, shaking his head. You make it sound poetic. You didn't just run. You disappeared. No letter, no message. Just a ghost. I had to tell 2 newborns their mother wasn't coming home. I know. You don't, he said, his voice tightening for the first time. You don't know what it's like to hold 2 babies and wonder which one will remember you less. You don't know how to keep breathing when every night feels like the echo of a life you lost. The words shattered what was left of her restraint. I couldn't stay, she whispered. I was sick, Elijah. I was terrified of what I might do. He froze. What you might do? She nodded, trembling. Postpartum psychosis. The doctor said it was rare, but I would look at them, and I couldn't feel anything but fear. Not of them, of me, of what I might become. His face softened, confusion and grief colliding. Why didn't you tell me? Because you looked at me like I was breaking, and I didn't want you to see how far gone I already was. You deserve someone strong. I couldn't even hold my own children without shaking. For a long moment, he said nothing. The cafe's hum faded until there was only the sound of their breathing. Finally, Elijah spoke. You should have let me in. I know, she whispered. I just didn't know how. He stared at her for a long time, then exhaled. 6 years, and this is the first time I've heard the truth. Would it have mattered back then? Yes, he said simply, because I never stopped wondering why. Olivia looked down, her tears dripping onto her hands. I can't undo it, Elijah, but I can be here now, for you, for them. He rubbed the back of his neck, looking suddenly weary. You think showing up fixes 6 years of silence? No, she said, but maybe it's a start. He studied her face, searching for the woman he'd once loved, or maybe for proof she was still there. When he finally spoke, his tone was quiet but firm. Thursday morning, Liberty Ice Rink. The girls have lessons before school. Don't come to talk. Just show up. Olivia blinked. You're inviting me? I'm giving you a chance, he said. It's up to you what you do with it. He stood slowly, leaning on his cane, and slipped a few bills onto the table. As he passed her, he paused long enough to whisper, If you disappear again, don't come back. Then he walked out into the snow, leaving her alone with her untouched coffee, her guilt, and the faint, fragile possibility of redemption. Thursday morning arrived dressed in quiet snowfall. The city was still half asleep as Olivia pulled into the Liberty Ice Rink parking lot. Steam curled from her travel mug, mingling with the frost on the windshield. She sat there for a full minute, staring at the building, her breath fogging the glass. 6 years of absence, and now she was about to step back into their lives. The absurdity of it hit her all at once. How she'd spent years controlling markets, companies, entire industries, but couldn't control the tremor in her own hands. She finally got out. The air bit at her cheeks, sharp and clean. Inside, the rink buzzed with early morning activity, parents bundled in coats, kids skating clumsily under the watch of patient instructors. The scent of coffee and cold metal filled the air. Olivia spotted them immediately. Elijah sat on a bench near the glass, his cane beside him. Leah was already on the ice, laughing as she tried to spin, while Ava practiced with deliberate focus, her movements precise, graceful. The contrast between them was like light and shadow. Olivia hesitated near the entrance until Elijah's gaze found hers. For a moment, neither moved. Then, with a small, almost imperceptible nod, he gestured toward the bench beside him. She crossed the room, every step echoing louder than it should. When she sat, the air between them was cold but bearable. "You came," he said quietly. "I said I would." He smirked faintly. "You used to say a lot of things." Olivia didn't flinch. "I mean it this time." He nodded, eyes fixed on the ice. "Leah's fearless. She falls 10 times and laughs every time she gets back up. Ava doesn't fall. She'd rather stop than risk being clumsy." "They sound like you," Olivia said softly. He glanced at her. "And you." She wasn't sure if it was meant as praise or accusation, but it didn't matter. For the first time in years, the sound of her daughter's laughter surrounded her, unfiltered, real. Leah waved from the rink, beaming when she spotted Olivia. Ava noticed too, but her face remained careful, unreadable. Leah skated over to the edge, cheeks flushed. "Dad, did you see me spin?" "I did, champ," Elijah said, smiling. "Pretty sure you set a new world record for dizziness." Leah laughed, then turned to Olivia, her eyes bright. "Hi." Olivia's heart stuttered. "Hi, sweetheart." "Your mom, right?" The word hit harder than she expected. "Yes," she said, her voice gentle. "I am." Leah studied her for a second, then grinned. "Cool. You want to see me fall again?" Olivia laughed, tears threatening. "I'd love to." Leah zipped back onto the ice, spinning in wild circles before collapsing into a pile of giggles. Ava watched from a distance, her brow furrowed, measuring the space between curiosity and distrust. "She remembers you," Elijah said softly, "in the way kids remember things they never really knew." "And Ava," he sighed, "Ava remembers the silence more." Olivia nodded. "That's fair." For a while they sat without speaking. Leah's laughter filled the air, and somewhere beyond it, a new sound. Music from the rink speakers, soft piano notes echoing faintly. Olivia recognized the melody. It was his. "Elijah," she whispered. "You still play?" He looked down at his trembling hands. "Sometimes, when I can." She swallowed. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For all of it," she said. "For leaving, for not coming back sooner, for every second I missed." He didn't look at her. "I used to hate you for that," he said. "But somewhere along the way, I got tired of hating. I just stopped waiting to." The words were simple, but they gutted her. "Elijah," he stood slowly, gripping his cane. Don't ask me to make peace with it today." "I'm not," she said quickly. "I just need you to know I'm not running anymore." He turned to her, eyes sharp, searching. "Then stay. For them, not for me." "I will." "Prove it," he said. "They have practice every week. Same time." She nodded. "I'll be here." Leah skated toward them again, nearly crashing into the wall. "Dad, Mom, did you see that? Ava said my arms looked like noodles." Ava glided over, rolling her eyes. "Because they do." Olivia smiled, unsure if she was allowed to laugh, but Leah solved that by grabbing her hand. "You should try. It's fun." Olivia hesitated. "Oh, I don't think—" But Leah was already tugging her toward the rental counter. Minutes later, Olivia was on the ice, wobbling like a newborn deer. Leah clung to her arm, cackling. Ava lingered a few feet away, pretending not to watch. Elijah sat on the bench, hiding his laughter behind his hand. Olivia took a shaky glide forward, then promptly fell. Hard. The cold rushed up her back, but Leah's laughter made it impossible not to smile. "You're terrible at this," Leah squealed. "Thank you for noticing," Olivia gasped. Ava skated over, crossing her arms. "You have to bend your knees. You're stiff." "I'm very aware," Olivia said, trying not to laugh. Ava sighed, grabbed her elbow, and adjusted her posture. Like this. Olivia looked down at her daughter's small, serious face. You're a good teacher. Ava didn't respond, but her hands lingered a second longer than necessary before she let go. Then she turned and glided away, cheeks faintly pink. By the time the lesson ended, Olivia's knees ached, and her heart felt lighter than it had in years. As she unlaced her skates, Leah leaned against her shoulder. You're funny when you fall. I've had a lot of practice, Olivia said. Leah yawned. Will you come next time? Olivia looked up, meeting Elijah's gaze across the room. He said nothing, but the smallest nod passed between them. Yes, Olivia said softly. Every time. Leah smiled sleepily and hugged her arm. Okay, don't forget. Olivia kissed the top of her head, her eyes burning. I won't. And for the first time in 6 years, she meant it. The following week, Olivia arrived at the rink before the others. The bleachers were empty, the air sharp with the smell of ice and polish. She wrapped her scarf tighter and sat down, hands clasped, heart steady, but expectant. The first time she'd come, she'd felt like an intruder. Now she felt something stranger, like she belonged here but hadn't yet earned it. She heard laughter at the door before she saw them. Leah darted in first, holding Elijah's hand and dragging him along. Ava followed, coat zipped to her chin, eyes flicking toward Olivia before she quickly looked away. You're early, Elijah said as he approached. His breath showed white in the cold. I wanted to see them warm up, Olivia said, smiling at Leah. You've been practicing? Every day, Leah said proudly. Dad says I'm reckless. She's not wrong, Elijah muttered. Leah giggled. Ava says I skate like a baby giraffe. I said you skate like a confident baby giraffe, Ava corrected without missing a beat. Olivia laughed, the sound unguarded. Well, that sounds impressive. Ava's lips twitched before she caught herself and looked away again. Once the girls were on the ice, Olivia sat beside Elijah. His cane leaned against the bench, and he rubbed his hands slowly, flexing his fingers like they no longer belonged to him. She watched quietly before speaking. Bad day, he exhaled through his nose. They're all a little bad now, but this one's tolerable. She wanted to reach for his hand, but didn't. You hide it well. I'm a teacher, he said. Half my job is pretending I'm fine. She smiled faintly. The other half, trying to convince kids that practice beats talent. Olivia followed his gaze to the rink. Leah had already fallen twice, but she bounced back up, grinning. Ava glided beside her, trying to correct her form, but laughing too hard to hold her posture. They're good together, she said. They balance each other, Elijah agreed softly. Ava thinks before she moves. Leah moves before she thinks. Olivia chuckled. They really are ours. His smile faltered, and she realized the word ours had startled them both. It hung between them like something fragile and alive. After the lesson, Leah ran up to her. Mom, guess what? Olivia froze, the words sinking into her chest like sunlight breaking through frost. Mom. What, sweetheart? I didn't fall once during the spin part, Leah said, her face glowing red from the cold. Dad said I looked like a real skater. Olivia grinned. That's because you are. Leah leaned in, lowering her voice. Next time, you should try to spin too. I'll teach you. I'd love that. Leah beamed and ran off to unlace her skates. Ava stayed behind, standing beside the bench, arms crossed. You came again, she said. I told your dad I would. Ava studied her, eyes the same gray-green as Elijah's. You don't have to keep proving it. I'm not proving anything, Olivia said gently. I just like being here. Ava's jaw tightened. It's been 6 years. I know. You missed a lot. I know that too. Then why now? Ava's voice wavered, the calm cracking at the edges. Why not before he got sick? The question struck hard. Olivia took a slow breath. Because I was afraid of facing him, of facing myself, but mostly of hearing what you just said. Ava blinked, caught off guard. What do you mean? I was afraid I'd run out of time, Olivia said, and now I have to earn every minute back. Ava looked away, her throat working. You can't just pick up where you left off. I know, Olivia said, but I can start where we are. Ava's silence stretched, but it wasn't rejection, it was thought. Finally, she murmured, Leah believes in you. She believes in everything. She's got her father's hope. Olivia said softly. And your heart. Ava frowned but didn't argue. When Leah returned, she was holding her drawing notebook. Look what I made! She opened it to a crayon picture of 4 stick figures holding hands on a white field. That's you, she said, pointing at a tall figure with red hair. And that's me and Ava and Dad. We're at the ice rink. Olivia's breath hitched. It's beautiful. Ava leaned over. Why's Mom's hand so big? So she doesn't fall, Leah said matter-of-factly. She's still learning. Elijah's soft laugh joined theirs. You hear that, Liv? Art imitates life. Olivia smiled, blinking away tears. It's perfect. Leah tore the page from her notebook and handed it to her. You can keep it, but don't lose it, okay? I won't, Olivia whispered. Later that day, Elijah invited them for hot chocolate. The cafe down the street had fogged windows and chip tables, the kind of place that felt like time forgot it on purpose. Leah sat between her parents, dunking marshmallows into her drink, while Ava quietly drew in her notebook. This feels, Elijah began, then stopped, glancing at her. Strange? Olivia offered. He smiled faintly. Right. The word warmed her more than the drink. For a fleeting moment, it was like they were whole again, a family suspended in time. When the girls went to refill their cups, Elijah leaned closer. They like you here, especially Leah. I don't deserve that, Olivia said. Maybe not, he said, but you're showing up. That counts for something. She met his eyes. Does it count for you? He didn't answer right away. Ask me again in a few months. She smiled sadly. I can wait. He looked at her, really looked, and for a second the years between them fell away. You waited long enough, he said quietly. Before she could reply, Leah called out from the counter. Mom, they have whipped cream. Can I have extra? Olivia laughed through the tears she hadn't realized she was holding back. Go ahead. As Leah returned, marshmallow on her nose and Ava shaking her head beside her, Olivia reached into her pocket and felt the crayon drawing still folded there. For the first time in 6 years, she didn't feel like a ghost in her own story. She felt alive. By the time spring began to thaw the city, Olivia had found a rhythm she didn't think she was capable of anymore. Every Thursday morning, she drove to the rink before sunrise. She'd help Leah lace her skates and bring Ava a thermos of cocoa that was never quite as good as Elijah's, but close enough that Ava had stopped refusing it. And every Thursday, Elijah was there too. Quiet, observant, slower now, but still steady in spirit. His laughter was softer, his voice a little weaker, yet every word still carried weight. It had become a fragile kind of peace. That morning started no different. Leah was spinning too fast, Ava correcting her as always. Elijah giving calm instruction from the bench. Olivia sat beside him, a sketchbook open on her lap. Leah's idea. You can't just watch, Mom. You gotta draw it so you don't forget. So Olivia tried. Her drawings were messy, but she didn't care. For once, perfection wasn't the goal. But then she noticed Elijah's hands. The tremor was worse. Subtle at first, then visible, the cup in his hand rattling against the bench. His jaw tightened as he steadied it, and when he saw her watching, he forced a smile. Cold, he said. Old bones. She wanted to believe him, but she'd read too much, learned too much. Later, when the girls were packing up, he stood and swayed slightly. The cane wobbled in his grip. Olivia reached out instinctively, steadying him before he fell. Elijah, she whispered. I'm fine, he said through a weak laugh, brushing her hand off. I just stood too fast. But he wasn't fine. That night confirmed it. The phone call came after midnight. Leah's voice was shaking. Mom, Dad fell. Olivia was already out the door before Leah finished the sentence. When she reached the house, the lights were on, the girls wide-eyed and barefoot in the hallway. Elijah was sitting on the floor by the piano, pale, his breathing uneven. It's just my pride, he said hoarsely. You need a hospital, she said, kneeling beside him. He shook his head, managing a faint smile. Hospitals can't fix time, Liv. Her hands trembled. You're not giving me a choice. He looked at her for a long moment before sighing. You always did win the arguments eventually. At the hospital, the doctor's words blurred into white noise. Dehydration, muscle exhaustion, advanced progression. He needed rest, they said. Monitoring. Support. Olivia sat by his bedside, listening to the rhythmic hiss of the oxygen machine. His skin looked too pale against the white sheets. His fingers curled slightly as though the tremor had finally exhausted itself. When he woke, she was still there. "You didn't go home," he murmured. "I'm not leaving." He smiled faintly. "You used to say that before, too." She flinched. "I meant it then. I mean it now." He studied her for a long moment, his eyes soft. "You've changed." "So have you," she said, trying to smile. "I got older," he said. "You got braver." Her throat tightened. "No, I just got tired of being afraid." He looked at her, really looked, as if seeing the truth for the first time. "Then stay tired," he said quietly. "It suits you." She laughed through tears. "That's not a compliment." "Sure it is," he whispered. "You were always at your best when you stopped pretending to be perfect." Silence followed, heavy but peaceful. After a while, she asked softly, "What happens now?" He exhaled. "Now, we go home. We make it easy for them. We teach them that endings aren't the enemy." Her voice cracked. "You can't talk like that." "I have to," he said simply. "They deserve honesty. You do too." She gripped his hand. "Then be honest about one more thing. What do you need?" He hesitated. "You, here, not saving me, just staying." "I can do that," he smiled faintly. "I know." Back home, the days fell into new patterns. Olivia helped more. Cooking, cleaning, driving the girls to school. She stopped staying at hotels and started sleeping in the guest room, though more than once she woke up in the living room, watching over Elijah as he slept on the couch. One evening, she walked into the girls' room to find Leah with a pencil and Ava reading aloud from a notebook. "What are you two up to?" she asked. Leah grinned. "We're writing a story. It's about a fox who got lost in the snow, but found her way back because her cubs never stopped leaving her paw prints to follow." Olivia's breath caught. "That's beautiful." Ava looked up, her tone serious. "It's your story." Olivia blinked. "Mine?" Leah nodded. "You left, but you came back, and that's what matters." Olivia sat down beside them, heart full. "Can I read it when it's done?" "You can finish it," Leah said, handing her the pencil. "You know the ending better than we do." Olivia stared at the paper. For a moment, she couldn't move. Then she wrote slowly, her handwriting shaky but certain. "The mother fox didn't just find her way home. She stayed." Leah smiled. "See? Perfect." Ava's eyes shimmered, though she said nothing. She just leaned against her mother's shoulder, and Olivia realized that in the quiet warmth of that small room, surrounded by crayons, stories, and love reborn, she wasn't fixing a broken life. She was finally living one. That night, she found Elijah at the piano, fingers trembling but moving slowly across the keys. The melody was familiar, the one he'd written years ago, unfinished. "Still working on it?" she asked softly. He didn't stop playing. "Thought I might finish it before I can't." She sat beside him, pressing her hand gently over his. "Then let's finish it together." He smiled, a tear slipping free as the notes filled the room. "We already are." By May, the house had learned to speak in whispers. The hum of the oxygen machine had become background music, soft and steady. The girls no longer jumped at its sound. It was simply part of their world now, like the ticking of a clock. Olivia moved through the days with quiet purpose, making meals Elijah could swallow, marking doctor visits on the calendar, learning the language of caretaking without complaint. She'd built empires before, but this required a different kind of strength. Sometimes she caught Elijah watching her from his armchair, eyes half amused, half tender. "You don't have to keep pretending you like oatmeal," he rasped one morning as she spooned it into bowls for breakfast. "I don't pretend," she said, deadpan. "I lie convincingly." Leah giggled. Ava rolled her eyes but hid a smile. And Elijah, he laughed, soft and strained, but real. Moments like that carried them through the harder hours. One evening, Olivia stood at the window, watching the sun sink behind the mountains. Leah was sprawled on the rug, coloring, humming a tune she didn't realize was the same one Elijah had written years ago. Ava sat at the piano, practicing scales with perfect, disciplined precision. Olivia turned when she heard Elijah's voice behind her. "You've made it beautiful again," he said. She smiled faintly. "You mean we have?" He shook his head. "No, you. I just get to see it." She crossed the room and sat beside him. "You were always the heart of this house, Elijah." "Maybe once," he said, his words slow but clear. "Now it's you. I can feel it. Every corner, every sound. It's you holding us together." Her throat tightened. "That's not true." "It is." He looked at her, eyes bright despite the fatigue. "You always thought love was something you had to earn. It never was." She reached for his hand, the muscles beneath his skin thin but warm. "And you always thought forgiveness had to be given, but maybe it's something you choose together." He smiled, the corners of his mouth trembling. "Guess we finally figured it out, huh?" "Just took us 6 years," she said, brushing a tear from her cheek. "Worth the wait." The next day was the girls' school showcase. Leah had insisted they all come, even though Olivia worried Elijah wouldn't make it through the crowd. "I can do one more," he'd said stubbornly. "One more performance for them." When they arrived, the gym buzzed with chatter and clattering instruments. Olivia found a seat for Elijah in the front row, near the aisle so he could stretch his legs. Leah and Ava joined their classmates on stage. Leah clutching her violin, Ava with her music sheets perfectly aligned. As the lights dimmed, Leah waved from the stage, her grin infectious. Ava didn't wave, but her gaze found them in the crowd, steady and sure. Then the music began. It started with a familiar melody, soft, haunting, undeniably Elijah's. Olivia's breath caught. She turned to him, but he was already looking at her, eyes glistening. "She finished it," he whispered. Leah's bow trembled at first, but Ava's piano anchored her. Together, the twins played their song, the one Elijah had started before she left, the one Olivia had helped him complete by his bedside. The lyrics Leah sang were simple, almost childlike. "If love is a song, play it slow. If time forgets the melody, start again." By the time the final chord faded, Olivia's cheeks were wet. Elijah reached for her hand. "Now it's theirs," he murmured. That night after the girls were asleep, Olivia found him on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, the night air cool around them. The stars spilled endlessly overhead, the same way they had on the night they first said "I do." He was quiet for a long time before speaking. "Promise me something." "Anything. When I can't play anymore," he said softly. "Don't let them put the piano away. Keep it open. Let them make noise, even if it's terrible." She smiled through her tears. "I promise." "And keep the house full," he added. "People, laughter, mess. Don't turn it into a museum of what we had." Her voice broke. "Elijah." He turned his head toward her, the faintest glimmer of mischief in his tired eyes. "You always hated mess. I'm giving you one more challenge." She laughed despite herself, leaning into his shoulder. "You really don't know when to stop teaching me things." He kissed the top of her head. "That's how you'll know I'm still here." They stayed like that for a long time, two silhouettes against the quiet hum of the world. Over the following weeks, Olivia noticed the change coming, like the slow turn of seasons. His speech grew softer. His hands, once full of music, now rested still against the keys when she played. But he smiled every time she sat at the piano, every time Ava hummed under her breath, every time Leah's laughter filled the room. He didn't speak much near the end, but when he did, it was always something that lingered. One morning, as she adjusted his blanket, he whispered, "You gave them back their mother." She looked down at him, blinking through tears. "And you gave me back my heart." His lips curved faintly. "Then I guess we're even." That night, she dreamed of the four of them skating under falling snow, the girls racing ahead, Elijah laughing, the melody of their song weaving through the air like a promise. When she woke, the house was still. The piano sat open, the last notes of his music waiting in the air. She crossed the room and touched the keys lightly, pressing one just to hear the sound. It was warm, alive, and though her tears fell freely, her hands were steady. Because she understood now, some love doesn't end. It just changes form. She began to play. The morning after Elijah's passing began in silence. Not the kind that comes from grief's weight, but a stillness so deep that even the house seemed to be holding its breath. The hum of the oxygen machine was gone. The air smelled faintly of the lavender oil Olivia had dabbed on his wrist the night before, now lingering as a whisper of peace. For a long time she sat beside him. His hand rested loosely in hers, the warmth fading slowly. He looked asleep, the faintest smile frozen at the corner of his lips. She brushed a strand of hair from his forehead and whispered, "You kept your promise. You stayed." Her voice trembled, but the tears didn't come right away. They arrived only when she turned and saw the piano. The lid open, the sheet music still waiting where they'd left it, the melody of staying. She pressed her hand to her chest and finally let herself break. The funeral was small. Elijah had never wanted a crowd, just music and people he loved. The church was filled with soft light filtering through stained glass, painting the pews in muted color. Ava sat stiffly beside Olivia, her jaw tight, her hands white-knuckled in her lap. Leah leaned against her mother's shoulder, crying openly. Olivia's arm wrapped around them both, one holding grief that screamed, the other grief that hid behind silence. When it was time for the service to end, the priest invited anyone who wished to speak. No one moved. Then from the front pew, Ava stood. Her voice was small at first. "My dad taught me that music doesn't stop when someone leaves. It just changes who's playing." She looked down at the floor, then back at her mother. "He said the melody was ours now." The room went still. Leah tugged at Olivia's sleeve. "Mom, can we play it?" Olivia hesitated, but Ava was already nodding. Together they walked to the small upright piano near the altar. Leah climbed onto the bench beside her sister, and the sound of the first notes echoed softly through the church. It was the same melody Elijah had written for them, the one they'd finished together in the last weeks. Olivia closed her eyes as it filled the air. When they reached the bridge, Ava faltered. Her hands froze. Leah looked up at her. "It's okay," she whispered, but Ava shook her head, pressing her lips together. "I can't." Olivia rose from her seat and walked toward them. Without a word, she sat beside Ava and placed her hands on the keys. "Let me help." Together, mother and daughters played the final verse. Slow, deliberate, trembling, but whole. The last note hung in the air like a prayer. When it faded, Olivia whispered, "He's still listening." And for the first time since the night before, she believed it. The days that followed were strange and quiet. Grief came in waves, sometimes heavy and sudden, sometimes light as a sigh. The house still smelled like him. His mug still sat on the counter. His scarf hung by the door. Olivia didn't move any of it. Not yet. But life continued. It had to. She made breakfast. She walked the girls to school. She played the piano every night, the same song Elijah had loved, until the sound filled every corner of the house. One evening, Ava found her there. "You don't have to play it every night," she said softly. Olivia smiled faintly. "I don't have to. I want to." Ava hesitated, then sat beside her. "Dad said you used to be afraid of music." "I was afraid of what it reminded me of," Olivia admitted. "Now it reminds me of him." Ava touched the keys, pressing one note carefully. "Then maybe we should learn something new. For him." Olivia looked at her daughter, so much like Elijah in her quiet conviction, and nodded. "Okay, something new." A few weeks later, Leah came running into the kitchen, her hands clutching a flyer. "School recital. They said families can perform together." Ava groaned. "Leah!" "Please," Leah begged, turning to Olivia. "You'll play with us, right? Like before?" Olivia froze. Like before. She hadn't realized the girls already saw her as part of that before. She smiled through the ache in her chest. "Of course I will." The recital took place in the same auditorium where Elijah had once watched them play. The lights were warm, the air buzzing with nervous energy. Olivia stood backstage with the girls, hands steady despite the flutter in her chest. When their names were called, the three of them walked out together. Leah carried her violin. Ava sat at the piano. Olivia stood between them, her fingers brushing the microphone. "This song," she said, her voice trembling, "was written by someone we love very much. He believed that music could heal anything, even a broken heart. Tonight, we're playing it for him." The audience went still. Then the first notes began. Leah's violin led, bright and tender. Ava's piano followed, firm, deliberate. Olivia's voice joined last, low and warm, the same tone Elijah once said could make any song feel safe. When the final chord faded, Olivia looked out at the crowd through tears. She didn't see faces, only light, the same golden glow that used to fill their home. She smiled. "He'd be proud of you both," Leah whispered. "He's proud of you too." That night after the girls had gone to bed, Olivia sat by the window, the moon reflecting off the piano's polished surface. She opened the bench and pulled out the last page of Elijah's sheet music. At the bottom, in his handwriting, was a line she hadn't noticed before. "If love is a song, play it again." She traced the words with her fingertips and whispered, "Always." Then she placed the page on the stand, pressed her hands to the keys, and began to play, softly, steadily, the same melody reborn once more. The house breathed with her. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of him. And for the first time since he was gone, the music didn't sound like goodbye. It sounded like forever. Summer arrived gently, wrapping the city in warmth and gold. The air outside the house was alive with sound. Children laughing in sprinklers, the low buzz of cicadas, the steady rhythm of life continuing, whether hearts were ready or not. Inside, things moved slower, softer. Olivia's world had become a quieter orbit. The girls, the music, the mornings that felt too bright, and the nights that stretched too long. But somewhere in that stillness, something beautiful had begun to grow, a kind of peace she had never known before. Every evening, she and the girls gathered around the piano. It was their ritual now. Leah would hum, Ava would play, and Olivia would fill the empty space between them with soft notes and words Elijah had once written on scrap paper. "Start again," she would whisper when they stumbled, and the girls would smile through the mistakes. Sometimes she caught herself waiting for his voice to join theirs. And though it never did, the silence between notes began to feel less lonely. On a Saturday morning in July, Olivia woke to find sunlight spilling across the piano bench. Leah was sitting there, legs swinging, flipping through a notebook. "What are you doing up so early?" Olivia asked, rubbing her eyes. Leah grinned. "Writing a story." "Oh?" "It's about a fox," Leah said. "The same one from before. But now she teaches her cubs how to find home even if they get lost." Olivia smiled, sitting beside her. "That's a good story." Leah leaned her head against her arm. "It's not finished yet. I don't know what happens next." "Then write what you want to happen," Olivia said. Leah thought for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, I think the fox makes the forest sing again." Olivia felt her throat tighten. "That sounds perfect." Later that day, she took the girls to the park near Liberty Rink, the same place where it had all begun. The rink was closed for the summer, but the smell of ice still lingered faintly in the air, mingling with cut grass and sunlight. Leah ran ahead, chasing butterflies, while Ava sat beside her mother on a bench, a sketch pad balanced on her knees. Ava rarely spoke about Elijah anymore. She didn't have to. The way she looked at the world, careful, deliberate, full of quiet understanding, said everything. After a while, she asked, "Do you ever get scared you'll forget what he sounded like?" Olivia took a long breath. "Every day." Ava nodded, sketching softly. "Me too." They sat in silence, the kind that held them rather than hurt them. When Leah finally ran back, flushed and out of breath, she held out something small, a white feather. "Look, I think it's from Dad." Olivia smiled. "Maybe it is." Leah's grin widened. "Then we should keep it, like a sign." Ava rolled her eyes. "It's a feather, Leah." Leah stuck out her tongue. "It's a magic feather." Olivia laughed softly, watching them bicker with familiar affection. "We'll keep it," she said, slipping the feather into her pocket, "just in case." That night, the girls begged to sleep in her bed. "Just for tonight," Leah promised, already half asleep. Ava didn't argue, though she insisted on keeping her sketch pad nearby. The three of them curled together beneath the same blanket. Olivia watched them breathe, synchronized, peaceful, whole. And for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe this was what Elijah had meant by stay, not just physically, but in the quiet, in the ordinary, in the living. Weeks passed in gentle repetition. Olivia started volunteering at the girls' school, music lessons twice a week. She hadn't touched a classroom piano since college, but the moment her fingers found the keys, something in her came alive. The children adored her. They called her Ms. O, and every time she said, "Let's try again," she heard an echo of Elijah's patient voice in her own. After one session, the music teacher pulled her aside. "You have a gift," he said. "You ever think of teaching full-time?" Olivia smiled faintly. "Not until now." That evening, when the girls were asleep, she found herself in Elijah's study, now half hers. The piano, the shelves of music sheets, the framed family photo he'd kept all those years. She touched it gently, tracing the younger version of herself smiling beside him, twin babies in their arms. She whispered into the quiet, "We're okay, Eli." Then she opened one of his old composition books. Inside were pages of unfinished lyrics, scribbled notes, pieces of songs that would never be played exactly as he'd intended. But one page stopped her. It was a letter never sent. For when she finds her way home, tell her the music never left. It just waited. Olivia pressed the page to her chest, tears falling silently. "I found it," she whispered. "I found the way back." A few days later, the girls invited her to the park again. "We have a surprise," Leah said, dragging her toward the small amphitheater by the pond. Ava set up her music stand. Leah stood beside her, holding a violin that looked almost too big for her small hands. "What's this?" Olivia asked, smiling. Ava glanced up, serious and proud. "Our song. We wrote it." They began to play. The melody was new, bright, youthful, imperfect. But beneath it was something familiar. The echoes of Elijah's composition, reshaped into something that belonged to them now. Leah sang the bridge, her small voice trembling. The song kept playing when the day grew dark. We followed its sound and found our spark. When they finished, Olivia clapped, laughing and crying all at once. "That was beautiful." Ava's expression softened. "It's called The Melody of Home." Olivia knelt between them, pulling both girls close. "He would have loved it." Leah grinned. "He heard it. I know he did." Ava nodded. "So did you." And in that moment, surrounded by laughter and sunlight and the soft echo of music still hanging in the air, Olivia realized something simple and true. Love hadn't left. It had simply changed form, the way songs did when new voices carried them forward. Autumn returned the way it always did, slowly, with a kind of reverence. The trees along the street turned to fire and gold. The mornings were crisp again, the air sweet with the smell of fallen leaves and the faint promise of rain. Olivia had never loved this season before. It used to mean deadlines, travel, obligations. But now it meant something else entirely. New beginnings that didn't come with contracts or conditions. She woke early out of habit, but instead of answering emails, she sat by the piano. The girls' backpacks were lined neatly by the door. The house hummed quietly around her. Lived in, loved, imperfect. Her hands rested on the keys, the same way they had so many mornings since Elijah's passing. She didn't play right away. She just sat, listening to the silence until it began to sound like peace. When she finally pressed the first note, it rang through the house, warm and full. The melody came unhurried, a song without beginning or end. Somewhere upstairs, she heard Leah laugh in her sleep, and Ava mumble something about 5 more minutes. She smiled and kept playing. Later that day, she drove them to school, the radio humming softly in the background. Leah talked the whole way, about her science project, about a dream where she flew an airplane made of cookies, about how Ava had rolled her eyes at breakfast. Ava smirked. "Because you poured orange juice on your cereal." Leah gasped, scandalized. "It was an experiment." Olivia laughed so hard she had to wipe her eyes before parking. "You two are impossible." "No," Leah said, grinning. "We're unforgettable." Ava rolled her eyes again, but her lips curved into a smile. "She's not wrong." When they hopped out of the car, Leah ran ahead toward the school doors, while Ava lingered for a moment. She looked back at her mother. "You're coming to the fall concert next week, right?" "I wouldn't miss it for the world," Olivia said. Ava nodded, tucking her violin case under her arm. "Good. It's our first show without him, but I think he'll still hear it." Olivia's chest tightened. "He will," she said softly. Ava hesitated, then reached in and hugged her quickly before walking away. It was brief, but it lingered long after she disappeared through the doors. That evening, Olivia returned home to find sunlight spilling through the windows. She moved through the house quietly, straightening the living room, folding blankets, tucking little fragments of their life into place. When she reached the piano, something caught her eye. A folded piece of paper sitting on the keys. It was Leah's handwriting, large and looping. "Mom, we wrote you something." Below that, in Ava's smaller script, "Play it when you need to remember." Olivia opened the paper carefully. It was a short melody, handwritten and uneven, but there was love in every imperfect line. She could almost hear their laughter in the notes. She sat and began to play. The melody was gentle at first, then brighter, layered with warmth. It wasn't polished. It was alive. A small, beautiful echo of everything they'd built together since the day she came back. Halfway through, she caught her reflection in the polished piano lid. For the first time, she didn't see the woman who had run, or the CEO who had conquered the world and lost herself in the process. She saw someone whole, someone who had learned to stay. Weeks later, the school auditorium was full again, crowded, buzzing with parents and children. Olivia sat in the front row, holding a small bouquet of white lilies, the same flowers Elijah had brought her on their first anniversary. When the curtains opened, Leah stood on stage beside Ava, whispering something that made her sister roll her eyes and smile. Then Ava nodded at the conductor, and the music began. The girls played their new song, "The Melody of Home." It was different from anything Elijah had written, yet his spirit was there in every chord. Leah's violin soared and stumbled and soared again. Ava's piano grounded it, sure and strong, and Olivia, listening, realized that the song wasn't just for him anymore. It was for all of them, for the life that kept unfolding even after loss. When the last note faded, the audience erupted in applause. Leah curtsied dramatically. Ava bowed with quiet grace. Both of them looked straight at Olivia. She stood and clapped until her hands ached, tears streaming freely down her cheeks. That night, when the girls were asleep, she sat on the porch wrapped in one of Elijah's old scarves. The stars stretched wide and brilliant above her, and the wind carried a faint echo of the song from earlier. She thought about how far they'd come, how the fear that once ruled her had turned into something else entirely. Not courage exactly, something quieter, steadier, love that stayed. She whispered into the night, "We did it, Eli." The wind rustled through the trees, soft and tender, almost like a response. Olivia closed her eyes, imagining his voice. Low, warm, teasing, "You always did." She laughed quietly, tears slipping down her face. "You'd be proud of them." "I am," she imagined him saying. The sound of a violin drifted faintly from Leah's room, followed by a few hesitant piano notes. The girls were awake, still playing. She let the music fill the night, every imperfect note wrapping around her like an embrace. And in that moment, she knew the truth Elijah had always understood. Love didn't vanish when life changed. It lingered in laughter and music, in the tiny ordinary miracles of everyday staying. Olivia leaned back, looking up at the stars. "If love is a song," she whispered, "we're still playing." And as the music continued, soft, uncertain, endlessly beautiful, the world felt full again. Not perfect, not unbroken, but whole.